1958, I came out of full federal service with the United States Army, having been in World War II, recalled for the Korean conflict in 1950, and stayed on until about 1957. When I came back out of the service, I started to go into the investment business and felt that an affiliation with a service club within my own town would be a good thing. I had heard of the Rotary Club and the Kiwanis Club. I remembered both of them. The Kiwanis Club, which once a year had a dinner at my church, the Wesley United Methodist Church, in which hundreds of people attended. It was called the Farm City Dinner, and I also knew that I had some very good friends that were in the Rotary Club. And one of my best friends, and who had been a neighbor of mine for a number of years, was Eugene Wagner. And I talked to Eugene, and he suggested that I put my name in as a person that was interested in joining the Connellsville Rotary Club. At that time, we were having our meals at noon on Thursday in the Carnegie Library. The Kiwanis Club met, I believe, on Wednesday at noon also. I hadn't been there too long a time when I heard some rumblings as to our Rotary Club not getting the benefit in the figures that were published by the Carnegie Library as to our contributions to the library, because we paid our contributions to the Kiwanis Club, and the Kiwanis Club was getting the full value of those contributions. So after a vote was taken, the Rotary Club decided to meet down the Connellsville YMCA, which is located down there near the Christian church and has recently been demolished. We ate upstairs in the auditorium, and it was there that in 1962 that I went through my tour as president of the Rotary Club. One of the things that I remembered was that I tried to get someone to take charge of the singing and didn't have much success. So I, as the president of the club, had charge of the singing, had the songs all picked out, led the songs, and I did that until the end of my year. A couple of years after that, a Rotarian who had been president of the club by the name of Ira Yonkin reached the time when his death occurred, and he willed a diamond pin, presidential pin, to the then president of our Rotary Club. And I happened to be the president at that time, and I carry that as a very fond remembrance, not only of him, but of the Rotary Club itself. During the time that I have been a member of the Rotary Club, there's been several things which I have had a great thought for, and of course the main thing has been crippled children. And so for a number of years, under the sponsorship of Gene Wagner, we took care once a year of buying gifts for the crippled children in the Connellsville area. Then the crippled children was taken over by the county school system. That's the system that's in Fayette County, Greene County, and Washington County, and they were established out at License Ring, number 3. And at that time, our club decided to meet out there, have a dinner catered in, and then have a Christmas program in which we gave gifts to the various crippled children out there. This went along for several years, and gradually our members seemed to be not able to get out there for the luncheon and then get back to their businesses, and it got down to the point where only the committee, which Gene was still the chairman of, and I was one of the members of the committee, decided to carry on, and for a number of years since that time, it has been traditional for this committee to go out to License Ring 3 and bring gifts to the children. We used to give clothing, but with the number of children out there that sometimes has been 30 or 40, and if you multiply what it costs to buy a sweater or a dress or something like that, boy, the costs just got out of hand. And so for the last number of years, we've been giving candy to the children and also candy to the people out there that supervise these children. In the last several years, since the death of Eugene Wagner, I have been chairman of the committee, and as I say, we have kept that up, and I'm sure that everybody that's connected with crippled children know that the Connellsville Rotary Club is the one that sponsors the Christmas party out there, and I have received many compliments in regard to that particular fair. I have always felt that Rotary, in the work that I do, getting to know many people that are in businesses and things like that, has been a great help to me. And amongst the members of the Connellsville Rotary Club, I can say that I have had quite a number of clients, and I have enjoyed everything that the Rotary Club has done. I became interested in the Paul Harris Foundation a number of years ago and decided that I wanted to be a Paul Harris Fellow, and so I became a Paul Harris Fellow. And a year or so ago, when we were really pushing the Polio Plus situation there, I was able to also have my wife enrolled as a Paul Harris Fellow. And both my wife and I have enjoyed attending the various festivities that are held when the conferences of our district are held, and enjoying the fellowship of all of those that are members of the Paul Harris Foundation, and also enjoying Rotary as it is. I remember when we had one of our members, who was it, was the director, you know who I mean. What's the name? Gene, what's his last name?
Ghost.
When Gene Ghost became the governor, our club worked very hard, and when we had the conference up at Seven Springs, every member of the club was involved. I remember a number of us bought jackets in order to look uniform, and we had a great time during this conference. We have a new member of our organization who is coming up within the next year or so as the governor of our district, and I certainly know that this club wants to put on something that will be remembered not only by the members of the conference but by the Rotary Club from Connellsville itself. So let's all get together and make our plans so when the time comes we'll be all set.
Good. Thom, when with your year of president, what memories stand out? What were some of the big things that happened during your year?
That was 1962. the greatest thing that happened, according to my recollection, was we put on first a membership drive and also a drive for attendance. We had what we called the North and the South, and I had outlined on a big map those that were part of the North and those that were part of the South. And we had a lot of rivalry. Number of times we brought in some caps and some flags and some things that represented the, let's say, the Confederacy and the good old United States. But I feel that during that particular year that our attendance went up considerably, and we took in quite a fair number of members. And I would say during that year that the membership program and the program to bring the attendance up to where we were really within the top number of clubs there that had an attendance which was really worthwhile. And from that we seemed to go along for quite some time with good attendance. Lately our attendance, for some reason, seems to have fallen off, and what we need is something to get started back again on the role of bringing our attendance up within the top clubs of the district.
Have you ever attended any of the international conventions?
No, I during a good bit of the time that I have been in Rotary, and up until 1971, I was still a pretty good part of the military, belonging to the Pennsylvania National Guard, but having an assignment which kept me most every weekend, and sometimes longer times than that, going to Harrisburg, and quite often I would be assigned to something out as far as California or down in the southern parts of the states, to be away from the club for a month or so. So about the time these various times came up to go to the national convention there, why I usually found that I just couldn't get away from those military duties in order to take that time. I have always talked with people that have been there, have read a lot about it in our magazines, and from everything that I have gone through, I know that that is something that you just you don't know what it's all about until you go to one of those. I might add that I have a hobby. My hobby has been the Boy Scouts of America. I joined the Boy Scouts in 1923 at the age of 12 years old, and I have been registered with the Boy Scouts of America since then, and I'm now on the 67th year as a registered volunteer of the Boy Scouts of America. And as I say, I have been the council president, the Westmoreland Fayette Council president, and for about the last 10 or 15 years I have been on the national committee of the Boy Scouts of America and represented this area there, and that has taken me all over the United States and its many territories. Dick Franks is a nephew of mine, the oldest son of a sister that lives in Connellsville. Dick has kind of followed, to some degree, the military work that I have. I came up initially through the Pennsylvania National Guard, having enlisted in the unit at Connellsville, which, by the way, for a number of years was commanded by my own father. I took this unit into World War II, and I also took this unit and a number of others from the surrounding district into the Korean War. Dick graduated from the University of Indiana, Pennsylvania, and immediately was called on active duty because of having been commissioned through the ROTC. And he spent over a year in Vietnam, came back, and stayed in the service a year or so, and then decided that he wanted to pursue other things. So he has been actively engaged in the reserve part of the service. At the present time, he holds a very responsible staff position with the 99th ARCOM that meets at Oakdale near the Pittsburgh Airport, and he holds the rank of a lieutenant colonel. So I said his career in the reserve and my career in the National Guard have run along about the same paths there, and my interest has been in seeing him move along as fast as he can. And as I say, it was my pleasure to talk to Dick and find that he felt that he really wanted to become a member of the Rotary, and I'm very pleased that within the next year or so he will have a term as our president. I would say the only time that I was a member of the Rotary, one of the persons I remember quite well was David Gould. David Gould had been a president. He was a high school teacher. I had him when I was going to high school. But he was secretary of our club for any number of years. During those years, we never changed secretaries very much. And he did a very, very fine job. Dave, of course, passed away. In my early years, I became acquainted with Lou Lynn. And Lou was a little ahead of me in being the president, but I happened to be on the board of directors at the time that he was president, and he helped me a lot when the time came for me to take over as the president. Van Dyke Humbert and I had been together first in scouting, and by the way, Van Dyke Humbert was the first Eagle Scout from the Connellsville area. And Van, throughout his lifetime, and I, being members of the same church, and having been in scouting together, we're very close. I feel that I've had a special going together there with George Honasak in a number of different ways, and Melvin Keller. Melvin Keller and I are about the same age. We have been together in quite a number of different things there, and Melvin and I have enjoyed Rotary, and I must say that when I came in Rotary, in addition to Eugene Wagner, why Melvin Keller was one of those that brought me in. There are a number of others. Albert Fulmer has been a very good friend of mine during the time I've been in there, but I must say practically everybody that has become members of the club and then have left. I remember Paul Sandusky, who's way up in years, but came there every meeting. I remember Dr. McDaniels, who was way up in years and who was a member of the Rotary there for quite a number of years. But I can say throughout the time that I have been a member of the Rotary Club, the highlight of my week normally comes about 11:30 on Thursday when I leave my home and head down for now the Elks Club to enjoy fellowship with the Rotary Club. And I have never regretted any of the time that I have spent with the Rotary Club. I was enlisted in the National Guard when I was just a little over 15 years of age by my father, who commanded the National Guard unit out at the State Armory on Washington Avenue. My father was retired from the United States Marine Corps and had a very responsible job with the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. When the time came for the unit to go on active duty in 1941, I commanded the unit then at the State Armory, which was called the Anti-Tank Company of the 110th Infantry. I took them to Indiantown Gap, and from there was later picked as one of the young officers to start in a new military branch, which later became known as the Tank Destroyers. And I helped form a new unit at Indiantown Gap, and then we went into training many places in the United States. Finally arrived over in England. After we'd been about a month in England, I had a call to visit a certain place for an interview. Just before my unit went to England, I had graduated from the regular course of the Command and General Staff College out at Fort Leavenworth. And what happened over in England, they were going to form a new headquarters for an army. And they were looking for young staff officers on hand in England. And when they run through the card files, my name came up. I was interviewed, nothing much was said, and a week later I was ordered back to this same place, and I found that I had been picked as a young staff officer on the general staff of General George Patton, who had just come up from Sicily. And I was with Patton day and night from that time until the end of the war. And as I say, it was my pleasure to see him under all circumstances and to enjoy the fact that the 3rd United States Army had a wonderful time during World War II, and the movements that took place there were really highlighted by Patton's 3rd United States Army. General Patton, just before I left the 3rd United States Army to come back to the United States, was relieved of his command because the Army thought he was going to go down to Czechoslovakia and that area there and beat up Tito. And they had enough of the war, so Patton was sent to near Heidelberg, and within a week or so, in an automobile accident, he met his death. I might tell you that at a new cemetery being built near Luxembourg City called Homme, I stood beside Patton as we looked over some of the construction that was being started, and Patton remarked that if anything happened to him while in combat, he wanted buried in that cemetery with the rest of the soldiers. And that is where Patton's body now lies, and his tombstone is exactly the same as a Buck Pryor's, except it has General George H. Patton on the tombstone. But I would say that was a highlight of my career. During the Korean War, at one time I was on the general staff of the commanding general of the United States Army Europe, stationed in Heidelberg, and I when I came back to the United States, I joined the staff of the 3rd United States Army, now in the United States there, and served some time there with them. For any of those that have seen the picture, General Patton, I might tell you that about 90% of the scenes that were in there were actually scenes that of things that occurred during the time that I was with George Patton. One particular scene there has to do with where General Patton, when the Battle of the Bulge started, all we had was snow and rain, and we could not get any airplanes up into the air. And he called in his chief of chaplains and said, "Chappie, I want you to come out with a prayer to the good Lord and ask him to clear the skies out so that we can go after them damn Germans." And for some unknown reason, the skies did clear up, and the Third Army was one of the main ones that was able to knock off the Germans and move on into Germany. Shortly after that occurred, General Patton issued a little card in which the exact prayer of this chaplain was on the back of the card, and on the front of the card General Patton signed it, and I carry that in my pocketbook as my most prized possession of the 44 years of service that I put in the Armed Forces of the United States. I retired in May of 1971 at the rank of Brigadier General of the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. Just before my retirement there, I had had command of a brigade of the 28th Infantry Division there, and this promotion came, and I've enjoyed it ever since. I put in 44 years, of which probably 16 was full-time, and a great portion of the other years I was on active duty with the headquarters of the Pennsylvania National Guard, and at the time I retired, I was able to retire at practically the pay of a person that had 30 years full service in the United States Armed Forces. Melvin Keller and I went to school. Melvin was a year or so ahead of me, but we were rather close, going through most of the grades. Melvin Keller was in the insurance business, and he had lots of people up in the Dunbar area, of which my wife and her family were amongst those that he had acquired as clients. Melvin Keller and Gene Wagner both introduced me to another organization known as the Oddfellows, and through those two gentlemen I joined the Oddfellows, and have gone through all the chairs of the Oddfellows, and have enjoyed my being an Oddfellow as well as a Rotarian. Melvin was one of those people there that once he started doing something, he just kept right at it. And knowing the number of years that he has perfect attendance in the Rotary Club is something that is amazing. I somehow feel ashamed because of having military duties and having things which involve the scouting and so forth, that I have never had one full year of perfect attendance. And sometimes on the places where I've been, I've just not been able to just step right out of the gathering and make a meeting there. But the perfect attendance that Melvin has had, and of course I've been acquainted with Melvin's wife and Melvin's family, and one of his daughters, who's married to a Haynes, goes out to the Wesley Methodist Church, of which I'm a member there. And as I say, it goes back a long time, and the majority of it is pretty well associated since 1958, when I rejoined the Connellsville Rotary Club. Gene Ghost came into Rotary. To the best of our knowledge there, up to the time that Gene came with us, we never seemed to have anyone that really had the full interest of trying to move along in Rotary. And before we knew it, why, Gene was doing things for the district, and shortly thereafter there he was nominated to become our district governor. And from that point on, Gene has really been one of the top people that our club has had to interest us and keep us going in the Rotary situation. And Gene, by the way, was our first Paul Harris Fellow. And as I say, I know that Gene has done many, many things for the club. Even after he left his top job with the district there, Gene has never let the club down. Lots of times after people have hit the top there, they just sort of fade away. But Gene has always been part of us, and everything that has gone along, why Gene has had an interest in it. And I'm sure that the up-and-coming John Fiesta there has had a lot of help from Gene, and that if and when the time comes that he goes into that office there, why Gene will be right behind him as well as the rest of the club. Oh, I think I would say that the motto that the Rotarians have, service above self, is something that if a person really gets and becomes part of Rotary, that thing sticks with them. And many times I know in my business things have come up there, and I've thought a little bit about it there, and that motto, service above self, has rang a bell. And that there are things that maybe I thought I wanted to do that were, let's say, not 100% the real thing, and I have turned around and done what I should have done, and because I've done it, why I feel that I have received more by doing it than trying to not carry out the exact principle on there, and I feel, and I feel that the people that I have dealt with that have been in Rotary, the majority of them have been people there that you certainly could depend on and know that they were trying to carry out the same thing there, and that I think everyone that has any kind of a business connection whatsoever should become a member of a service club. There was a time when the Rotary Club there, people used to ask me, well, what do the Rotarians do? And I would say in the last 6 or 8 years, the Connellsville Rotary Club has brought itself out before the public in more ways than one, and I feel that's one of the things that's boosted our membership, and it's made us all feel good there. We've had the pancake supper, and we've had the blood thing up at the high school, and we've been into any number of different things there. And one of the things a number of years ago, we used to go out to the Fayette County Fairgrounds, and at one time we pushed a caboose up to where our booth was, and we had the best time up there with mingling with the general public and everybody coming in there and spending some hours and some time, and I just think that was kind of the start to bring us together, and it was there that people saw the signs and everything and said, well, that's the Connellsville Rotary, and I think that from the start along that line there, why we've been into so many different things there that makes you proud to feel that you are a Rotarian and from the Connellsville area. I think my last words would be to live up to the motto, service above self. If you do that, your life can't go too wrong. Furnace Axe has been one of our loyal members. Furnace Axe comes from an area where I've been living for a number of years, which is the Dunbar Township area. Furnace Axe is a self-made man. He's worked very diligently and very hard as an agent in the insurance business. I found Furnace to be somebody that knows that in the insurance business, people just don't get on the telephone and come to you and say, I'd like to take out a $100,000 policy or something like that. It's sold by you going out and talking with the people, and gosh knows that all of us at times in our life certainly need insurance. We kid Furnace a lot because around the first time that we held our pancake supper, and this was out at the Presbyterian Church, Furnace was in there. We knew little or nothing about putting on one of these things and how to work up the stuff for the pancakes, and we spewed it all over the kitchen there, and when we were in bringing the food into our clients and things like that, all of us were just like a bunch of youngsters. But we had a success at that time, and of course every time we have that, we're looking for a report as to how many attended and what did we end up with as making for the Rotary Club. And poor Furnace at that time, in the civilian work that he's done and things like that, and the fact that we were just starting out and trying to get all the ends together there, was a little late in bringing out this report. And so ever since that time, we've been kidding Furnace, but I would have to say that Furnace got the thing started after we'd had that one out there. We were pretty well lined up as to what needed to be done, what changes ought probably to be done, and I should say that from that time on there, we've gone and had a very successful pancake set up there, and Furnace has always been one of the group there that's been part and parcel of us that's made it a success there. So I have all the feelings in the world for Furnace, and I know that whatever Furnace does, he puts his heart and soul into it there, and he's made himself a self-made man.
All right, what about George Honasek?
Well, George Honasek and I, by virtue of being members of the club and by virtue of George's melodious singing voice and my sometimes trying to help a little bit of the thing there, we've had a sort of a going thing. We've had back of our minds a few things that has to do with the investment business there, and George has come along with a couple of things which has been a help with me, and a number of things that George has been a help with. One time when George was down in Florida, he looked out of his window and he thought one of the banks had gone broke. People were making a rush out to a certain place, so he ran down and wanted to see just what was happening, and he found out that it was a new ice cream place that had opened up, and it was really selling. And George got the name of the company and so forth, and over a period of years, we've carried an interest in that thing. I found out that George is an artist, and an artist of great talent. And a number of times I have visited him at his shop and have seen and witnessed some of the paintings and things that he has made. And over a period of time, in my capacity as a member of the Boy Scouts of America Volunteers, I've had the occasion to ask George for support at various times, and George has never been one to turn down anyone, and we have a number of times in this Rotary Club had George pushes on and say, well, I'll donate, and one time I know he donated a good TV set, and let's put tickets out for it, and that has helped us. So George has been very generous. George has a very fine family. George indirectly has helped a relative of my wife's get a job, and getting a job around this area here is really tough, especially for a young man. And there are just any number of things that George has indirectly done. George was a good friend of Van Dyke Hubbard, and between the three of us there, why we've had a good friendship. We of course miss Van Dyke Jr. there, but the memory of Van and all the things that he did while he was with the club is with us. Dick Franks, one of our members, is leaving tomorrow, and he's going to take a trip up to Canada. First stop to be Niagara Falls. A number of years ago, I took probably my fourth or fifth trip to Niagara Falls. Every time I was up there, I seemed to be located somewhere when I went to sleep. I couldn't see the falls or anything, so I precisely ordered a room from the Brock, B-R-O-C-K, hotel, and asked for a room that would look upon the falls. And that evening, when I arrived up there, I went up to my room, and sure enough, there was the falls and all of its beauty. Went to bed that evening, and sometime, probably just about dawn, I happened to get up, go to the restroom, and I thought, now I'll get my view from the window of the falls early in the morning, and I thought that would certainly be nice. And I pulled the curtain back and looked out, and lo and behold, there was just a sprinkling of water going over the Canadian Falls. And I looked and I thought, I must be either in a dream or something's the matter, and I'm not going to tell anybody about this. I'm going to go back and get back and go to sleep and forget about it. The next day I took a tour, and the tour went down to a large Canadian power station that is just above where the falls comes down, and they have what they call the rapids. And there was a huge lake right there at this station on the hill. And as part of the tour, they start explaining just what they do, and they say, now, we get our water power from the falls. And I said, well, how do you get your water power from the falls? He said, well, during the hours when the tourists are not looking at the falls, they are diverted by huge pipes, the major portion, over to this area, and the lake fills up. And then when the time comes that tourists are going to be there in the early morning hours, it is again diverted back so that it falls over the actual falls. And then during the daytime, they let that drop down into where the whirlpool area is, and that runs the machines there, and they have enough water there with it coming in like that on a daily thing that it runs 24 hours from water, which is high up, dropping down, and that's where they generate some of their power. But as I say, if I hadn't gone to there, I'd have probably kept my mouth shut, just thinking, well, you're stupid, that's all. Wake up there and look out and not see the falls. I've known Al Fulmer for many, many years. I watched him come up through the various stages with Troutman and Company, and enjoyed his friendship. I've enjoyed Al Fulmer's wife. Al Fulmer, to me, has been one of the finest Christian people that I have ever run into. Al was with the Central Methodist Church the Central Methodist Church burned down, they were not allowed to use the insurance money to put a new church up. A good number of the congregation went to other Methodist churches. Al sort of felt that he would kind of like to carry on some of the traditions of the Central Methodist Church. And so he was instrumental in forming what I now believe is the Central Fellowship Church, located down where the V&O Railroad Station used to be, in a building that they have taken over and really made into a fine church. That church down there, although it's of an independent nature, I feel lends itself towards the ideals of the Methodist Church itself. The people down there are very, very friendly. They are a group that have some of them have had a rough time in life, but I would believe that there's some of the finest givers of any of the churches that we have in Connellsville. And Al, through his wife and his sister-in-law, have been the key pillars there. His sister-in-law ran a ladies' undergarment store in Connellsville for many years after having worked at Truplin's, and I became acquainted with her and have helped her in some of her finances and tax problems and things like that over many, many years. And as I say, between Al, his wife, and his sister-in-law, I've developed and run into a fine friendship. And as I say, I have found Al and his family to really be something when a person's looking for a Christian. In this world of ours, you read in the paper of deaths and shootings and this going on and that going on, somebody absconding with money, not only in the state but in the government and everything around. And sometimes you wonder if there are any Christian people left. And all I have to do is look and talk with Al, and right away there I'm back into knowing that there's still some that are left in it. And I've appreciated his friendship and the friendship of his family. The only thing I can say is that I have never regretted having joined the Rotary Club. I'm absolutely confident that that is the club that I should have joined, and since the time that I have been in it there, each time that I go down to a meeting there, I'm more and more convinced that it is the international club there, not only of the present but of the future, and that getting to know and work with the personnel that has been members of the club has been one of the highlights of my having come out of the service and come back to Connellsville. Around about last Christmas and New Year's, I seemed to catch the flu, and over a period of many weeks, taking antibiotics and cough medicines and whatnot, I finally seemed to have overcome at least the flu portion. However, I noticed that I had lost my appetite, and as time went along, I started, because of loss of appetite, I started losing some weight. So finally went back on a normal visit to see my physician. He said, let me take a little blood and give you a chest x-ray. This was on a Monday. On Tuesday afternoon, as I made arrangements to go to the Boy Scout conference at Philadelphia, I'm on the National Committee of the Boy Scouts of America, representing this part of the state. And for 20 years I've been going to conferences that are held all over this country. And I just made arrangements to leave Wednesday at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I no more got done with the conversation with the scout officials when my telephone rang, and it was my own doctor, and he said he hadn't been able to pick up too much from the blood work on Monday, and he thought that maybe I ought to take a couple tests in the hospital, and he wanted to have me admitted up there for a day or so that I could go through these various tests. And I told him about I was all set to go to the Boy Scout conference in Philadelphia, and he says, "Get up to the hospital, Tom." So up to the hospital I went, and the next 2 days I went through a series of tests with all kind of new type machinery they seem to have up there, including several x-rays. Finally my doctor came to me and he says, "Tom, you have infection of the kidneys and a large, enlarged prostate, and it's going to require us operating on you." So I went through the kidney operation first and had to go through several days of recovery, and from the prostate, and of course I was up there for 17 days. While I was up there, I had a minor operation on my knee. I'd had some pain in my knees and toes over a period of a number of years, and my local doctor took a look at it and says, "Tom, you've got water on the knee." So he came back in with a needle about 6 inches long and a big pump and pulled out a considerable amount of a yellowish liquid, and says, "You ought to be relieved from that." And after about 6 or 8 hours I found out that I was greatly relieved and have been relieved since that time. One of the questions they asked me in the hospital was, "When was the last time you were hospitalized?" And the last time I was hospitalized was when I was 4 years old. I got appendicitis, and that was 1924, 65 years before. And then he said, "Well, you were in several wars, were you not?" And I said, "I sure was." He said, "You were never hospitalized?" And I said, "I thank the Lord that I was never hospitalized. I've been home since the 9th of June, going through recovery, and found out it takes longer for a 78-year-old to recover than would if somebody was around 18 years of age. Today, I have visited my urologist. He's looked me over and says that he feels that within a couple of days I ought to be able to resume a little bit of the normal work that I do. Well, I certainly have missed all of you. I enjoyed having the majority of our ministers of the gospel who are in Rotary come up and visit with me. I used to feel, what's the use of sending somebody a card or going up and visit them in a hospital or sending them a flower? But I found that as you look at the four walls of the hospital up there, somebody gives you a telephone call, somebody stops in for a few minutes, or you receive some flowers and a call, that makes all the difference in the world. So I want to thank each and every one of you that remembered me during my stay in the hospital. I hope that I can soon be back amongst all of you.
VCR. Kind of like VCR. Do you? What are you going to say you, Santa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Santa.
If you look up at the camera, then you can see yourself over there.
Yeah.
The camera shot, okay?
Now it's Thom Scotts. What?
Remote control, right. Right, thank you, Santa. That's beautiful.
Merry Christmas to y'all.
Thank you.
Well, reindeers up there, don't let them come in. Okay, now let's see.
Oh boy, Jim, look what you got from Santa.
Oh, boy.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
There we are.
Okay.
Hey, Santa Claus, you've got problems. You're bad.
There we are.
What's your young
Oh,
folks,
he's
Santa?
not here yet. Why are you smiling?
What you gonna do?
There you go. We're having a little fun.
Oh, Marilyn, you think that's funny?
All right, how about
You think that's funny?
That's good about that.
Did you get her? She
Sure,
would
one
need
time.
paper.
Oh, thank you, Sal.
Did you
I don't
get
have
hers?
hers now.
What?
Well, I have my signature.
Here you are.
Thank you.
Thank you for your services.
Hey, where's Santa?
How you
I
doing?
recognize you there.
John, what's here?
Blends right in, doesn't she?
I was too busy pulling up
There's the teacher.
Okay.
Oh, gee,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Rick.
Santa Claus there.
Okay, we'll see you at Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Goodbye, Jim.
Okay, Miss Lisa. Yesterday the girls drank. The girl drank. Okay.
Santa's going.
Oh, my, here's Santa Claus.
Santa's going.
Well, how are you, Santa Claus?
Very good. There you are.
Look at that. My goodness.
You went upstairs when I got the VCR.
Boy, oh, boy. Oh, you mean you got a VCR, too?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, Santa Claus.
Now, we'll have a little something for you.
Oh, well, thank
you very much.
Santa Claus. Oh, isn't that nice? I love that. That'll make me work
Well,
back.
Merry Christmas.
Oh,
We'll see you.
thank you, Santa.
Here we go. Merry Christmas to all. There we are. Thank you. There we are. Okay, we'll be seeing you later. Goodbye.